Is Logan Paul wrestling's Rookie of the Year for 2022? It seems entirely possible after the performance he just gave against Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel. I am Tempest, still your Jam That champion and your Quizlemania champion, here to give my immediate reaction for Crown Jewel 2022. And right off the bat, I want to get into the main event for the undisputed WWE Universal Championship between Roman Reigns and Logan Paul. This match was unbelievably great. Legit like a 4.5-star match, I thought. It was so good. It's incomprehensible to me that someone as green as Logan Paul can be so not green in the ring. He's inexperienced, but it doesn't show whatsoever. He doesn't rush. He doesn't do any of the things that you would expect inexperienced wrestlers to do. I could gush about this match. It was so good. I expected this match to be good because Roman Reigns is great, and we've seen that Logan Paul is also very good for his experience level, but I could not imagine this match going any better than it ended up going. They did some really basic stuff early on. They were doing like gut-wrench suplexes and hip tosses, but Logan Paul was being really explosive and putting his all into every move. That was so fun. Logan Paul was giving off, or pardon me, Roman Reigns was giving off really good facials. Like, how dare this man out wrestle me? He was doing it's the Roman Reigns thing. You know, he's done a really good job of integrating trash talk and really good facial expressions into his character, and there was no difference here. They went back and forth, started almost getting into near falls, and then Logan Paul really fired up, did a Shawn Michaels tribute, did the flying forearm and the kip up, went for sweet chin music, but it got blocked, and then Roman Reigns got laid out, put on the announce table, and Logan Paul went for his frog splash off the top rope, which he did while doing a selfie. Goated. Awesome heat. If he was a heel, which he's not, although he might be, difficult to tell at times. But this is where the bloodline started getting involved. They went and grabbed Logan Paul's crew from the crowd, knocked them out, and then Logan Paul's brother Jake made his entrance, complete with music, so you know they're bringing this guy in full-time eventually. He came down, knocked out the Usos, which didn't look as good, but hey, wrestling takes time to learn, even if your last name is Paul. And then Solo Sikoa made his entrance to be the enforcer. Jake Paul squared off with him. Logan hit a big dive to wipe out the Usos, got back in the ring, hit the Superman punch, and got hit with the spear for the win. Roman Reigns retains the Universal WWE Undisputed Championship. I said that in the wrong order. But hey, this was a fantastic main event match. Honestly, one of my favorite WWE matches of the year. And I can't believe that I'm saying that about a Logan Paul match, but he is just so good. That was the main event to close out the show. Didn't have an Austin Theory cash-in attempt, as was speculated. Didn't have any of that. Just had a fantastic back-and-forth performance from Logan Paul and Roman Reigns. Getting into the beginning of the show, after an hour of the panels just flapping their gums saying nothing because there were no matches on the pre-show, you had Brock Lesnar and Bobby Lashley, one of my other most anticipated matches, and they started hot out of the gate. Bobby Lashley pushed Brock Lesnar into the steps before the bell and hit a spear on the outside. It looked for all the world like they were going right into the same pace that Brock Lesnar and Goldberg's matches usually had, both the Survivor Series 1 and the WrestleMania match. That's 33, not 20, of course, because we're talking about the good WrestleMania match. Just spears out of nowhere. They got speared through the barricade, and immediately Brock Lesnar then kicks out of another spear, starts hitting suplexes, takes Bobby Lashley to Suplex City, and eventually hits an F5, near fall, and Bobby Lashley keeps going for the Hurt Lock. Looks like that might be the submission win, but it almost seemed as if Brock Lesnar was trying to go for the rollover pin that people usually tend to do when someone's locked in like a sleeper or a $1 Million Dream or the Kirifuda Clutch or something like that, but didn't quite roll all the way over and just sort of pushed them back onto Lashley's back, laid on top of him, and got the pin. The early story of this show, mind you, was that there were a number of kind of bad, wonky finishes in a row. And in this case, it really did detract from the match overall. This was a really fun match, way better than the Royal Rumble match earlier this year. But the finish really did take it down like a full star, in my opinion. It was still good. It was still fun. And after the match, Bobby Lashley locked Brock back in the Hurt Lock. Seemingly, if he wasn't heel going into this, he got booed throughout the match. But if he wasn't heel going into this, it sure felt like Bobby was a heel coming out of it. I don't know if that was totally intended all the way through, but it does leave him, the guy who's going to be there every week, with more to do than it does Brock. Still very interesting, wonky finish, but a solid match. I'd probably give this opening match like a 3 out of 5. It would have been higher, but a bad finish. The main event, though, I forgot to give that a rating. I forgot to give the main event a rating. You're not going to get that cut out because this is an immediate review. We don't do any editing on this, so enjoy my flubs while you can. The main event gets a 5 out of 5. That was a brilliant match, one of my favorite of the whole year. Moving on from that, however, we had the newly added to the card, Damage Katarl, versus the new champs of Asuka and Alexa Bliss for the WWE Women's Tag Team Championships. It was a fine match. There wasn't necessarily anything wrong with it. It was good back and forth stuff. Obviously, when we got Asuka and Io Shirai in there together, it was at its best. But we saw both teams get cut off at different points. And at one point, again, this was the story of the early portion of the show. We got to the finish, which did seem to kind of fall apart, where you had Alexa Bliss looking to hit the Sparkle Splash. What year is this? Trying to hit the Twisted Bliss on Dakota Kai, but Io Sky distracted her. But it seemed like they got their streams crossed a little bit here. Dakota Kai managed to get the knees up and block the Twisted Bliss. And then Alexa Bliss got right back up to the top rope. And it was at this point that Io and Asuka started brawling on the outside and causing like a distraction of sorts. But it seemed like the timing was really off here. They took a long time to then get in the ring. And they were just rolling around, sort of doing like the cat fight spot where they just roll back and forth. And the referee kind of transparently turned her attention to that just as Nikki Cross got on the apron, crotched Alexa Bliss, and allowed Dakota Kai to Nikki Cross hit her finish on Alexa Bliss and allowed Dakota Kai to just get the pin. So Dakota Kai and Io Sky win the tag titles back after having lost them this week. Don't know what's going on with the WWE Women's Tag Team titles. Then again, I never really have. These titles have been all over the place, and I was hoping that that would be fixed with Triple H coming back. But they do get to say that they've had some big WWE Women's Championship change hands in Saudi Arabia. It was through nefarious means, and the heels won. So not quite the inspirational moment that you think this might be, but it did give me more confidence as I was defending this gold right here. So props to them for that. As a match, though, it wasn't very good. It was fine at times. There were good spots here with There were good spots here with Io and Asuka, as I'd mentioned before. But the finish, again, did kind of take this down a peg. I'm going to give this a 2 out of 5. Next up, we had another steel cage match in Saudi Arabia's great track record of steel cage matches, leading in from Roman Reigns versus Brock Lesnar a few years ago, and Roman Reigns versus Baron Corbin a few years ago, into this one, Drew McIntyre versus Karrion Kross. Now, this was a perfectly fine steel cage match for the most part. It did still have the escape the cage rules that I'm not a fan of, particularly when you can just exit through the door, which has never made sense to me, no matter how many times they've done it. And what makes even less sense to me is just as Drew McIntyre was starting to get the upper hand of things, Scarlett Bordeaux, who is supposedly being barred from interfering in this match, as per the stipulation, she pulls out Mace, and maces Drew McIntyre again, which was the finish of last month's pay-per-view. It was their finish of the strap match at Extreme Rules, and seemingly the cage was to stop her from doing this, but it didn't. I don't know why she didn't mace him earlier, because you can fit a spray through the fence, but regardless, again, this was a fine enough match. They had a superplex off the top of the cage or off the top rope with one of them hanging from the cage, that sort of spot. It was good enough. We hit like a Claymore out of nowhere, which was kind of wonky. Never really seen that before, but it was cool. And then they did the race to the outside where Drew was going over the top rope and Karrion Kross was trying to crawl through the door. And for some reason, when they do this spot, the guy who's climbing over always seems to win that race, even though you would think crawling out the door would be the much quicker route. They did this with Batista and Edge at, wasn't Judgment Day. It was One Night Stand 2007. Fact checker over that. Fact checker. And of course, in this case again, Drew McIntyre dropped to the floor first before Karrion Kross could make it out the door. Not quite the finish to a blow-off match of like a blood feud that you would almost want, but again, still a wonky finish that dropped down the quality of this match by maybe a little bit. But this match wasn't quite at the level of some of the other matches on this show to begin with. I'll also give this one like Probably a 2 out of 5. I'm not big on the cage match stipulation. But then, we had a very fun 6-man tag match with a better finish, and from this point onward, the finishes on this show did greatly improve, as we got the OC taking on Judgment Day. Now, there was, of course, a lot of spots in this match. I'm not going to be able to recap all of them, of course. I'll be here all day, and we can't have that. I've got board games to play immediately after this, so I'm looking forward to that very much. But, of course, some of the better spots in this where we had, like, a triple Tower of Doom spot halfway through, where we had a superplex spot in addition to 2 electric chair spots at the same time, where Damian Priest gave an electric chair to Carl Anderson. That's what. There were a lot of people involved in this spot. And also Dominic Mysterio was getting electric chaired by Luke Gallows. And then in the meantime, you had Finn Balor getting superplexed by AJ Styles. I'm pretty sure I've got all of that right. This match was a lot of fun. I said during the live reactions that I always pop for any sort of Bullet Club integration into these stories. Regardless of if it's good or not, I am always willing to give it a shot. And this was no different. I was very much willing to get invested in all this, and I was. Not as into the whole Dominic thing, but hey, Dominic Mysterio did his part in this match totally fine. He had a lot of really fun moments where he's asking to be tagged in, immediately goes into some offense where he's the one who can get cut off and be worked over a little bit more by the babyface team. I think that was really well done. The finish of this match, however, once the Good Brothers and everybody else were kind of pulled away from the match, was Rhea Ripley hitting an inverted electric chair drop onto the apron of AJ Styles, which allowed Finn Balor to hit a shotgun dropkick and a stiff-looking coup de grace for the win. The Judgment Day pick up the win over the OC. Carl Anderson, I hope it was worth it missing your date in New Japan to lose in Saudi Arabia again. We then move on to the Tall Man versus Tall Man match, Tall Girl 3, Return of Tall Man, Braun Strowman versus Omos. Now, I am not going to lie, the lizard part of my brain did activate when I saw these two step in the ring together one-on-one, but that part of my brain did again shut off pretty much immediately afterwards, because they got in the ring, they tried to do a test of strength thing straight out of the 80s, and this is where we were still like, okay, I'm still feeling the magic here of the big man versus big man thing. But then they wrestled, and this match went on for, how long did it go on for? 7.5 minutes. They probably could have cut that in half, and it still would have been adequate. It probably wouldn't have been good, but you would have gotten the appropriate finish that we ended up getting, that being Braun Strowman hitting a running power slam on Omos, because that is just going to be impressive no matter which way you slice it. But unfortunately, this match did go on a little bit too long. The 6-man tag, by the way, I'm going to give a 4 out of 5 to. I really enjoyed that match. This match, however, I'll probably give it like a 2 out of 5, maybe a 3 out of 5, because Braun Strowman won. That's what you wanted to happen. You got the running power slam spot. That's what you wanted to happen. It was still visually impressive, so like maybe I'll give it a 3 out of 5, but that might be too generous. Number scores are arbitrary anyway. Who cares? This match was dumb fun if you only watch the beginning and the end of the match and skip through the other 6 minutes of this. Otherwise, it was a good time. It was a good enough time. And then, of course, we got into the WWE Undisputed Tag Team Championship match as the Usos took on the Brawling Brutes. This match, again, was very fun. And it was nice to see a match like this going on immediately before the New Day match that is going to come on SmackDown this week. The Usos and Pete Dunne had a lot of good spots in this match. Pete Dunne, in particular, deked out one of the Usos who tried to super kick him mid-moonsault, which was a callback to their spot last month, and now instead, this time, he faked a moonsault, let the Uso try and go for a super kick, get out of position, and then Pete Dunne hit that moonsault. It was a really, really nice spot. I love that sort of thing. Ultimately, it was the Usos who hit a double splash to retain their titles. This was a very good match. This gets a 4 out of 5. Exactly what you want, just more good title defenses making for a better reign. And then the final match we have to talk about was the last woman standing match between Bianca Belair and Bayley. Fortunately, this match wasn't particularly good, we thought, because they just had a lot of things working against them. The last woman standing match stip is sort of a difficult stip to work with as is. You really need to kind of hit a certain level of magic with both spots and just a lot of different combinations of things in order to really capitalize on the stipulation. And they didn't quite do that. A lot of the spots here were quite lame, we thought. They tried a golf cart spot on the top of the ramp, and it didn't look good at all. This was the opposite of Sammy Guevara going face first off a golf cart moving at full speed, where Bayley tried to run into Bianca Belair, and Bianca was doing this, like she's standing in place watching it come, and then Bayley hit the brakes before it even got to her, so it totally killed the spot. They didn't have very good integration of the golf cart in this at all. They did a bit of a brawl on top of the golf cart, which was kind of fun. But then Bianca drove Bayley back down to the ring with Bayley holding on to the top of the golf cart, which was interesting but didn't really lead to anything, as Bayley was then chucked off the top of it, through a table, except the table didn't break. That looked like it sucked. Bayley was then immediately powerbombed through the table, which also looked like it sucked. And it looked like Bayley was then going to recover and win the title, only for Bianca to hit the KOD onto a chair, which did not cooperate, also looked like it sucked. And then a very creative finish where she put Bayley inside a... Pardon me, I was talking for a long time. Holy smokes. She put Bayley inside a ladder, folded the ladder up, and then pinned the ladder underneath the bottom rope so it couldn't open. She absolutely could have gotten out of it, but I'll allow it. It was a very fun little spot, a very fun finish to an otherwise kind of stinky match, unfortunately. That match will probably get like a 2 out of 5. I wasn't the biggest fan of it, but the show as a whole was really benefited. It really benefited from a great main event. Silly me, I forgot about the Bray Wyatt stuff. Bray Wyatt cut a promo in the ring talking about being from a great wrestling family, saying that nobody loves him, they only love what he's capable of, talking about the fans after a very wholesome I love you chant. And after a good promo, he was interrupted again by Uncle Howdy, saying that he will put on the mask. Bray Wyatt will put on the mask because it feels good and he knows that he's right. This was a very interesting extra layer onto all of this, adding a little bit more fun, a little bit more spooky nonsense to this feud. I say feud with Bray Wyatt and himself. I don't know where this is going, and we only got a little bit of a peek into what's next, but this was a good segment, 4 out of 5. A main event that will live on is one of the great performances a rookie has ever had in pro wrestling. I cannot say enough good things about it. Honestly, the show as a whole, I may have sounded a little bit more negative than I intended to because there were some finishes I didn't like, but overall the wrestling on the show was good, way better than the previous Saudi Arabia shows that we've gotten, barring last year's Crown Jewel event. And overall, I would either give this a high 3 or a low 4. This was a really fun match, greatly helped by a top main event. If you haven't checked it out already, make sure you check out our live reactions over on WrestleTalk Podcast. Make sure you check out Ollie Davis's review that will be coming on this channel much later today. And make sure you check out the podcast review that Ollie and Luke will be doing on WrestleTalk Podcast tomorrow. Make sure you check out Survival Series on PFK. I'm Tempest, still your Jam That Champion, and I'll see you next time.